Hi, so here comes a new build for some new salamanders I'm getting. I'm not going to tell you what I'm getting yet, but there are 3 juvenile salamanders. But as you can see, this is my stream Paludarium tank. I love it, but it is really dirty. Look at that. There's hard water stains, algae everywhere in this. It looks clear right now, but believe me, it's not. Algae all over the rocks. It's run by this Reptifilter that you'll see here in a second. I really want to do something nicer in here for these new salamanders I'm getting. And so this is going to actually be a paludarium again, as I usually build, but probably more land than water. And so I'm going to tear this down and I will show you step by step how I build it. All right, great. So what we've done here is we've emptied the tank, cleaned it out. I've saved all the plants and other things. I got most of the hard water stains off, scraped all the silicone off, threw everything away. I used a razor scraper, which you'll see here. And then I've also used, again, Barkeeper's Friend and scrubbed it several times with water, cleaned it out, vacuumed anything else out, and scraped it again, and then cleaned everything with rubbing alcohol. So now on to the next step. So one quick thing I wanted to add before I get into the rest of the build is here are a handful of the materials I'll be using on this build, including driftwood and rocks. As you can see, there's quite a bit of them. And so what I do is I kind of visualize how the hardscape is going to look, and I kind of set things up in the tank, even though there's really nothing in it. But as you can see, there's different rocks. There's slate rocks, some of these red and black rocks that I got out of a creek in Pennsylvania. And then I went to a tropical fish store here and got some of these slate rocks. I don't normally buy rocks, but I just bought them this time. I like these. They're flat, and I can make some structure. And then a lot of this wood I got outside and sterilized. But then some of it is Malaysian driftwood that I bought and then I sterilized. I just like the way it looks and the crevices. I'm going to show you really quick here in a second how I go about sterilizing stuff. But essentially, it's pretty simple. I just put the rocks in some hot water and scrub them, as you can see here. And then I also boil a bunch of water and put that boiling water into a bucket with the driftwood to get the tannins out. And I do this several times for several hours, and I pour it all out, and that's how I get to it. So here we go, drilling holes. I'm doing a 1/2 inch bulkhead, so I'm using a 1 1/4 inch diamond drill bit hole saw. Using this as my guide, as I'm going to use this piece of wood, I'm going to put it right through that so the bit doesn't dance on the glass. Here is some putty that I use to hold the water in so it doesn't make a big mess. You don't really need to use this, but then I also use some duct tape so the glass does not fall and break the other glass when you drill through. Pretty basic, a lot of people do this, but that's it. I'm not going to tape the rest of this as I did it last time, so now on to the next step. So we got some bulkheads drilled, as you can see. Threaded, double threaded, so everything looks good. I haven't water tested it yet, but I'm gonna have the water come out here, probably like a drip wall, and then have a tube come this side. This side I want to be land, so the species that are going in here are semi-aquatic. I mean, you could keep them fully aquatic, but I really want to have some substrate with some springtails and isopods. I always put springtails in, but I really want isopods in here, so I'm probably going to have to build a partition with some acrylic in this corner and not have water drip on it because it'll just saturate it. I'm going to have to build a drainage layer, a false bottom, and then drill an area to drain the water. So I'll probably be drilling another small hole down here and put a little plug in to drain. So I've drilled 2 holes, one for the outtake and one for the intake. But I'm gonna need to have some land, so I gotta think about that and kind of figure out how I'm gonna do it. Hey, so per my last comments on trying to figure out the terrestrial versus aquatic setup, what I did was I bought a piece of acrylic. You can get it at any home improvement store, Lowe's, Home Depot, whatever. I have quite a bit of it actually. They're about $50 a sheet for 2 feet, 3 feet by 18 inches, etc. So it's not that cheap, but it acts as a really good barrier for water when you silicone it. So what I do is I use these clamps, the straight edge here, and I figure out how high do I want it. So in this case, I wanted it 6 inches, and I wanted one to be 13 inches long and the other one 9 inches long, so I can make like an L, so I can basically have and I'll show you when I put it in the aquarium, but an area that is completely separated from the water, so no water can seep in and flood the substrate. So what I do is I clamp them down. I use this acrylic cutter, and I put on gloves actually too. And I do about 15 to 20 passes. I apply pressure, and it creates a pile of this this stuff that these acrylic pieces that come off, and then you just kind of apply even pressure here on the end, on the line where you have it, and you just kind of snap it off. I've actually broken a lot of these when I haven't cut them enough, so I do more cuts than less. I see a lot of people doing this with normal glass. I like this acrylic. It's just a lot more, you know, what's the word? It's not as fragile, and so I think acrylic's great. But this is what I'm going to be using, and I'll show you how I put it in here in a second. Okay, so cut the pieces of acrylic. Remember, these are 6 inches tall, and my one piece is extending from the background 9 inches here out to the front, and then the other piece here is coming 13 inches to the side, so that compromises my land area. And so here you can see I drilled a hole to drain the false bottom when too much water gets in. And so really at this point, all I really need to be doing is siliconing this in, which I will do here shortly and show you. I'm going to use this GE Silicone 1 you see right there. And once I silicone it in, I'm going to give it about 12 hours, 24 hours to cure. And as you can see here, I have now siliconed all this stuff in. I use a ton of silicone if you can't tell. I really want this to be watertight. I don't want to have to go back and do this again. It's a lot of wasted time if I have to wait another 12 hours. So I use a ton of silicone both sides. And so I think we're pretty good. I think that this should definitely be blocking the water area. We'll do a quick water test once it cures, and I'll be on to the next step. All right, so at this point, all the silicone is hardened on all the corners. You know, it's pretty good. I also have started working here with the A-Crate light diffuser. I'm actually making a false bottom which fits. Use some zip ties. A lot of people do this, pretty basic. To fit in here. I'll put some mesh, window screen mesh or some weed fabric on top. Weed fabric, I've noticed the water doesn't penetrate that well, even the stuff that's supposed to let water penetrate. So I might just use some screen, you know, some carbon fiber mesh. My problem is I notice my springtails fall into the false bottom. They tend to go down and end up on the bottom and don't really do their job. So I'll have to think about that. But one thing I'm going to do in here is I'm going to build structures. So this is where the water is going to come from. Again, I don't really know if I'm going to do a drip wall yet or have a waterfall. The problem with the waterfall is that the water might come into here if it trickles down somehow. So I'm going to have to be really crafty on how to avoid water over here, but have it for the rest of this. But what I think I'm going to do, like a step, I'm going to have to build out a crate. It'll be a pain in the butt, but build steps going up and then put kind of foam in rocks and other things like that and driftwood to make it look like a natural embankment. So, but what I want to do first is kind of get this all this stuff down. So I will show you what I come up with. And again, what I'm really using is I'm using these zip ties, a crate, this snipper here, and silicone. That's really all that there is to it to make these structures. So I'll show you what I come up with when I'm done. All right, everybody, so here we go. All the structures are now built. I have some steps and some other blocks and boxes that I built to kind of have a little bit of a cascading effect and to kind of lighten the load here. I don't want that too many rocks in here. I'm going to put rocks around these structures I built and some wood and other things. I also finished the false bottom back there. Stupid thing is I did not water test the false bottom area. I think it's fine. There's a ton of silicone, so I'm not really concerned about it. Even if it leaks, I'll be able to drain it. But I think we're ready to go on to the next step. And if you think that this took a long time and was a pain in the butt, you'd be surprised to know that it did take a long time and was a huge pain in the ass. But let's go on to the next step. So I had an idea. I wanted to make some slate. Instead of using a ton of heavy rocks like I usually do, I use a lot of these. I'm still going to use these. But I found this slate. I saw one of the people I follow on YouTube, actually one of the only people I follow, just don't have time. But Tanner Serp is really, really good and creative. I saw how he took some, he made a waterfall using slate. I've done that before, but I've never done it. He went to, he got a couple slate pieces, which is what I've done here. And you kind of just hammer them up and you break off pieces and you can kind of stack them. So I am gonna try to do that and see how it works. I don't know if I'm gonna end up using it, but I think it might look pretty cool. As you can see, it creates some cool, this is all natural slate, so totally safe. But anyways, that's kind of how I'm gonna try that and see how it works out for this, to build kind of a wall and waterfall. So let's see how it goes. Hey, so really quick, just a couple of seconds here. I wanted to show you, I used some Great Stuff Pond and Stone, which is the black expanding foam. I use this a lot because I think it's better with water, but you can use the other one too. The Gaps and Cracks is fine. But I wanted to show you something. So I put a lot of this, a lot of people would think this is a waste, but I put a lot of expanding foam in these cracks here at the bottom. One, it helps it hold things together in addition to the silicone. So it also creates a good barrier for water and things. But anybody who's kept amphibians will tell you, they like to go into the places you don't want them to go. So with any kind of amphibian I've had in my whole life, and I'm going back to like the late 80s now, they always get into spots where I think there's no way that they can get in, and they always somehow seem to squeeze in there. They're like an octopus. So what I'm trying to do here is basically baby-proof this for the animals I'm gonna have in here. And just from the beginning, try to figure out, well, could it get in here? And then there's no way I could go get them because I would have to tear the whole thing apart. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. I just wanted to kind of draw your attention to that. It's always, it's great to give them hides and things like that because they need that stuff so they're not stressed. But at the same time, you don't want them getting in behind your filter or something weird, or behind the egg crate light diffuser. So just something to keep note of. All right, so what I'm doing here is I've screwed in this, this male T, 1/2 inch into the 1/2 inch bulkhead. And I've drilled holes using a power drill and whatever bit size I want to create a drip wall effect, which will go over here. And this is one of the biggest pains in the whole build is these hoses, these vinyl hoses just are, they're so, they're coiled, so it makes it hard to unravel and straighten them out. So I have to use clamps and other things. On this side, I'm only putting 2 holes right here because I don't want water to drip in the land part. And I'm going to have it like this, but I'm gonna have the water do a little waterfall over here to create aeration on this side. So there'll be aeration on both sides and water movement because that's where the intake is. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. This is gonna be probably take me the rest of the day to do this, but once I'm done doing that, we'll show you what it looks like. Hey everybody, so I started on the background. The tank's vertical right now. And I wanted to do this part over where the land portion is going to be, but I should have never used Gaps and Cracks. I hate it. You can see the white stuff through. I've had to use a ton of stone dust to pound up those slate tiles that I have. It's natural stone, but they're tiles, and it's just a waste. I mean, you can still see white cracks. I don't think you can really see it from the front, but anyways, use this stuff. Use Pond and Stone, unless you like to go over things 1,000 times. I'm gonna plant a lot of things, so you probably won't see it, but I had a bunch of cans of it. I'm just gonna use it for around the house instead. I'm not using this anymore. I did use it to fill this stuff, so it's really adhered. This is those steps that I built out of egg crate light diffuser. I'm gonna build a slate wall kind of going up, stacked. It's gonna be a really heavy tank, which is why I used all this egg crate light diffuser. But anyways, I'm gonna continue to work on the background. I'm hiding the vinyl tubes that are gonna have the water, so kind of sealing it all up. And as you can see, I still have a clamp here to hold. These vinyl tubes were so tightly coiled, they kept popping out and ripping the silicone off, so I had to clamp them over and over. Once you foam them in, they're fine, but this one's still adhering because it kept coming out. But as you can see, I've got the holes drilled, and so the water will come out and hopefully have a little waterfall on this side and a little mini waterfall on this side because I don't know how much water's come out. But I'm gonna keep working on the background, and as you can see here, I am foaming in rocks, driftwood, things like that, trying to conceal up this vinyl tube, which the water will drip out of. As you can see, there's the water wicking mesh for plant growth in between the rocks. And, you know, made it about 3/4 of the way around, so making pretty good progress. This is, but, you know, I'm keeping it going in here. There's more progress. I've done most of the background. I want to build a little bit of a waterfall type of slate waterfall in the middle. You can see all the water wicking mesh here. And right here in the middle is where I'm, where the white egg crate is where I'm going to be building the slate. Yeah, you know, this is a really heavy tank, FYI. This is a lot of rock, more than I expected. But it's looking good. I really like this. There's a lot of driftwood in here as well for water to drip off of, as you can see. So I haven't tested it yet, but hopefully that's the way it's going to go, or I'll have to put more rocks in to divert the water. And now I'm on to, I am pretty much at this point done the hardscaping. This took a lot of time. This is probably the longest. This is only a 40-gallon long, or breeder, excuse me, 40-gallon breeder. And this is taking me a ton of time. Several days to do this. The hardscape is finally done. I have stone dust and little pebbles in between where the foam was, where I couldn't fit more rocks. There are a lot of rocks. I think there's going to be a really cool water trickling dynamic in this build, though. You're going to see when the water goes. On to the very fun steps of planting it and putting the substrate in and things like that. So getting close. Here what I'm doing is I'm making my substrate. What I did is I start off with some wood lump charcoal. I put it into a cardboard box, use a hammer, smash it up, and I use this. This is kind of a must for every one of my substrate mixes, except for tiger salamanders. I only put a very little bit in there because they burrow. And I'm just sure it's safe, but I don't know. I'm just paranoid with salamanders because of their skin. But anyways, this is how I start my mix. But I'm really happy with the way that get it nice and smashed up. The next thing I do is I take some sphagnum moss, put it in a bucket, also add some bark in it as well, some bark chips, add some cocoa fiber as well, and then I put also in some, I'm using Reptisoil here, I think. Yeah, I used Reptisoil, but mix all that stuff together, wet it down, so just spray it a little bit, and then really just kind of mix it up. And, you know, you don't want it sopping wet. And I also had a little bit of my old substrate as well that I used that was seeded with some beneficial bacteria, maybe a little bit of springtails, and but that's it. And then here's the plants. These are just the plants that I'm reusing. I'm not going to reuse all of them. Some of them are meant for like a rainforest type of setting. It's like the peperonia and some of these other ones I'm not going to end up using for this. And then it's just me in time lapse, put it in. As you can see, I'm going to use some leaf litter as well. These are leaves I collected from my house. Some of these are maple and oak, and a few other kinds of leaves. I get a trash bag every year. I go out and collect them and then desiccate them to sterilize them. And then I put some bug bites in. I got these from Josh's Frogs. I just hide these in the substrate so the springtails will have something to eat when the mold grows around them. I think they're just like dog pellets with mold growing on them, to be honest. And then that's it. Yeah, you can see here the substrate. Kind of zoom in there. And yep, the substrate is really ready to go for me to start planting things. And here's what I'm going to use again. There's a lot of mosses in here. Some Java moss. There's some haircap moss, some fern moss, some star moss. There's a lot of different kinds of moss I'm going to use. I'm also going to use some of the substrate in here as well to put in. But like I said, I'm not using all these plants. I'll probably use a syngonium, and I'll probably use the bird's nest fern and all the mosses, but I'm definitely not going to use some of these other ones like the peperonia. So I've started to plant the moss, super gluing it essentially with Gorilla Glue gel onto the background. A little bit of liverworts, as you can see, but mainly moss, all different kinds of moss really. Putting on some of the driftwood on the water wicking mesh. But yeah, here it is a better shot of it. I'm still going to add some more, but it looks really, really great. Really liking the way this is turning out so far. It's just going to be tricky controlling where the water drips, to be honest. I'm regretting having a dedicated land area, and I'm a little worried that when I try this, I should have been testing it from the beginning. So fingers crossed, and we'll see how it goes. Hey, so had some bad news. The false bottom flooded with water overnight because the silicone separated due to an oversized false bottom. So the silicone separated between two pieces of acrylic in the lower left corner. Luckily, I was able to use the drain plug that I drilled to get rid of the water, clean it out, rebuild the false bottom smaller, re-silicone everything, and now it's all watertight, tested it. The other thing I noticed was that the vinyl hose was leaking water on the right side over here into the land part. And so I had to foam that shut as well because it would over time fill with water, and I don't want to constantly be going down there to drain it. So no water dripping on the one side anymore, but I'm going to have a Mist King over there spraying it, so we should be all good, and stopped it. So let's see how it turns out. As you can see, I was able to finish the tank and fix the leaks, so really happy with the way that this one turned out. And I think the salamanders are going to really enjoy this once I put them in. I should be getting them in soon, and I'm going to have them in a quarantine tank for a while this tank cycles. Although I am using some pre-cycled media in the filter, and I'm also using the old substrate from the tank to jumpstart the biofiltration and get the beneficial bacteria. I also have some natural aeration here, so I don't need to add an air stone, which is nice. I also have a golden pothos there in the back to help filter the water. In terms of other aquatic plants, I have this anubias here, and then I have dwarf sage planted throughout. I also have my nerite snails. There's 8 of them in there that are going to work, so they will consist of my water cleanup crew. And then on land, I have several plants. I've got a creeping fig, which you'll see there's several of them. I also have a syngonium here in the background, and then also a bird's nest fern. In terms of moss, there's a little bit of Java moss. There is some haircat moss, star moss, and a few others. Also added some springtails. Haven't added any isopods yet. I'm waiting to jumpstart a culture, but the springtails are more important. Anyways, remember I achieved this look through a Fluval 207, which is my canister filter. I like those easy maintenance, and that's how I do this with the drip wall with the bulkheads. Anyways, I hope you guys like this as much as I do, and I know the salamanders will enjoy it. And please subscribe, leave comments, and off to the next build. Can't wait to do it. I think it's going to be a terrarium, and really looking forward to it. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and be back to you guys with another build shortly.